bud. Here we are.
Wonky Sam.
Wonky me. I was just trying to get my camera straight. And I was like, yeah, I think I figured it out. Hey, team. We're just kind of going to let this one flow because we were thinking about what to record today. And then we were like, there's that really cool thing we spoke about a minute ago that could be cool. And it's like fresh in our head. So we're going to have a chat in and around the comfort zone and getting out of our comfort zone. And how on earth do we know that we're kind of stretching ourselves for the right reason? Because there's kind of, it feels to me like there's this thing called the panic zone that we can sometimes end up in as well. And it's kind of this dance between all these zones, you might say. And maybe by the end of this, people are going to feel like they're in the twilight zone, but you never know, do you?
And this was all born out of a conversation where you considered being a lap dancer.
Well, I think, hang on a minute. Pole dancing was what came up.
Oh, sorry.
I mean, maybe that's a natural extension. Is it? I don't know. Well, I mean, they both say, well, I mean, they're both quite an athletic pursuit, quite challenging. Anyway, the reason it came up is because we were having a bit of a chat, weren't we? And you were trying to decide whether you wanted to do something because you felt as if it was going to help you kind of evolve and it was going to push you from a personal development point of view. And my point was, yeah, but I could train to be a pole dancer and that would be, a stretch for me from a personal development point of view, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's the right thing for me to do. And for whatever reason, it seemed to have the required effect in the moment. We had a giggle and everything seemed a lot more light, didn't it?
Yes. It was once again, it was a good analogy.
Just came to me.
It's good. Yeah. I was all caught up in, I think, do you know what? I think part of this is born out of, I've always had this bloody drive for growth. And for the longest time, I saw it purely as personal growth and development. And I think, so here's an interesting question. How much, because I'm in my own stuff all the time, and it's very hard to see outside of it sometimes because I'm human. Does everybody have this? Because to some extent, like as human beings, we're meant to evolve, aren't we? Like we're meant to grow. So does everybody have this drive to transform and change and grow? Or
it's a good question.
And to the same extent as like
it's a good question. It made me think of so if anyone, that kind of like incessant drive and like, oh my goodness me, am I ever going to get there? And I think there's a book, isn't there, that we've both read recently called Driven. Is it Douglas Brackman? Is that the chap's name who wrote it? I think is the author. I think I've got that right. And he talks about how, there are definitely a percentage of people that are driven, and there are perhaps a larger percentage of people that are less driven. But I think it sort of depends what angle you want to take on it, because I think for all of us, we're always looking for new things and adventurous things, I think, or perhaps we're all not. I don't know. We can only talk from our perspective. But it seems to me that when we sit in the comfort zone for too long, that becomes uncomfortable. And then things like drinking or, to make that tolerable, we can start doing things that kind of make it tolerable because we don't have to kind of look at it so much. That's sort of how I felt. So I've always felt really driven. I always had this feeling in my gut of like, yeah, no, I really want to do something. I want to create something. I want to build something. And it was funny because for me, even though when I was teaching, I knew that I was doing like a good thing. I knew that I was helping people, and I knew it was kind of like a great life pursuit. I knew it wasn't my thing. There were certain things about it that I really, really loved, but it wasn't the thing. It wasn't the thing. And I know that now because now I'm in something that for now is the thing, that growing this thing together and working on coaching, and I'm like the flavor of it, the feeling behind it is really, really different. and I choose to develop and grow all the time. And I think a lot of people, when they take alcohol out their life or whatever it might be, suddenly they realize, oh wow, actually no, I am full of all this creativity and potential, and I do want to grow. And then it becomes a question of like, well, in what way and in what direction, I guess.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's how certainly how I felt. Ever since I was a kid, I was always striving for something, and could say part of this is down to that Enneagram 3 achiever in me. So it was always chasing something, and I had this belief that there was something bigger that I was supposed to be doing with my life. And it was challenged by not having access to my own inner voice. So for the even going, what I chose to go and study at university wasn't really what I wanted to do. It was what my auntie thought that I should go and do, you know. And it was all about, you know, the beliefs that my family held around, like, you know, you need to have a decent earning, and you know, you can't go and study something that you enjoy. What's the point in that? You need to be picked up on the milk round. So I applied myself, but it never felt fully right. And I always remember being at university, and so I studied marketing, and I had a year in industry in the middle of it with Procter and Gamble, so like the biggest company that you could go and work for, and it was phenomenal. What a fucking experience that was! It was immense, and so I applied myself, and I really did love what I was doing. But I remember thinking, because I had exposure to different disciplines within marketing and business, and one of the things that I had to study was sales, like sales management. And I remember thinking, no fucking way I'm getting into that. No chance. And then what was my first job after I left university? Sales. And part of the reason I went into sales was because, well, that's where all the money is. And I had a huge amount of student debt to pay off. I needed gainful employment. I needed to pay for a roof over my head and all of that. So I ended up going into sales. And then that was my career, right? I just was pigeonholed in bloody sales. And all of my personal growth was, well, sorry, not my personal, all my professional growth was in that area. And it was doing the sorts of things that now make my hair stand on end. Because it's just not enjoyable at all. Not like, you know, oh God, I also remember, this is a really funny story. I just remember, so I used to work when I left university, I worked for Weetabix. So people in the UK will know this company. It's a big breakfast cereal manufacturer. And the thing that was great about Weetabix was that they were a very traditional British-owned company, privately owned at the time. And they had very traditional sales function. And we had to, as part of our training, we had to do this toe cut. Like, I can feel my toes curling now thinking about it. There were like a little group of, like, say 4 of us, and then the person that is doing the training, and the person doing the training sits in one room with candidate, and the rest of us have to sit in the other room. And in room number 1, there's this like sales process being played out, you know, like role play style. And then and we're in the room next door having it piped through in real time so that we can watch it. I mean, it was just bloody hideous. And I just remember being in that room, and oh, good grief. Like, you could hear the laughter from the next room. So as you're doing your thing, you're trying to concentrate, you can hear the laughter from the room next door. So and actually it was all in good fun, and it was okay, and it was jovial, and it was fun. But you know, those those, like whenever anybody says role play to me, I'm like, oh God. Because from a developmental point of view, it's like it's never ever floated my boat. But I was very much pigeonholed into this track. And then once you're in it, it's really hard to get out of it. So I kind of pivoted in my career into international sales, and I loved that. I really, really loved traveling. That was the thing. Like I liked like getting on planes in first class and then flying to a really nice hotel and staying in a really nice hotel, and then doing some business whilst I was there. So it was a great experience. And I worked for a fantastic company and saw the world. And it was really, I learned so much. It was a very entrepreneurial environment. So I learned a huge amount about business and all of the different aspects of business, marketing, sales, logistics, that like I was involved in everything. So it was really, really great experience. But all the while, I've still got this underlying dissent. Is that the right word? Like I didn't feel aligned, and I didn't feel like I was really fulfilling my potential, or like I didn't have any real purpose. So what I was doing was clearly valuable to the customers that I served and worked with, and I was making money for the company. But beyond that, it's like, well, this is all just a bit meaningless then, isn't it? You know, there was nothing really to me that was like if it all fell away, it's like, well, so what? Like, what kind of imprint does that make on the world? And so I would say that for a long time, I made a very good career, made a lot of money and all the rest of it, but was probably very unhappy and just felt like I was stagnating. And so drinking became the thing that makes it palatable, the thing that makes it easier to bear, until it makes it worse. And then you feel like or certainly I felt like those dreams were just becoming even further away, because I felt, oh, well, I'm just getting older and I've got even less opportunity now. I've got all these kids running around. So, you know, I'd like visions of, well, could I retrain? Could I like go and be a vet or something? That'd be really exciting, working with animals. And it's like, well, how the shitting hell would I do that? How would I just suddenly go and retrain? Where would I find this money from? And so then back into the cycle of, oh, well, what's the point? And this is just all crap, and oh, have another drink and that'll make me feel better. So that like end of my drinking career was really, it was getting all quite pointy to this part of me that really felt just like I had something else that I needed to be doing, but I had no fucking clue at all what it was. No clue. And I think all the while that I was drinking, I would have never ever got anywhere close to it, because I couldn't tune into that inner voice. So I really do think that there is this wonderful opening. You might not get all of the answers immediately, but certainly removing alcohol is a first step to be able to get some clarity and tune in to start to know yourself and what's really important to you. Because otherwise, like, you just keep spinning your wheels in, you know, like I was in sales. And it's interesting now because I'm still very much in sales to a degree, but when you're selling something that you utterly believe in and that you're totally aligned to, it's a really, really different feeling. So, you know, I completely agree with you about that whole, like, it feels very, very different, but I think it can feel like it's just very far off. And the question that I think comes up the most for people is like, how do you find the thing? How do you find it? Because when you're in it, that's wonderful. But when you're out of it, it's fucking terrible.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a pretty awesome thing to be curious about, because we can accidentally end up in these kind of feedback loops. I don't like the kind of I guess belief that I had was, the kind of root core thing running below is that I needed to either prove myself, or I had these kind of perfectionist tendencies. So like whether I was KP, waiting tables, like my first jobs, whatever it might be, at like 15 years old, I just didn't want to make a mistake. I wanted everything. I wanted to be the best in the room. I wanted to be good at it. And it was powerful. It was a powerful energy in terms of I made a lot of money. Like when I first started waiting tables, I sometimes would walk home with a couple of £100 a night in tips. As a teenager, I was like, this is amazing, because I was like turning this drive into. But like you kind of end up in this feedback loop of, well, I was doing it in a, and like we all have to make our own decision about what's meaningful to us. I think for some people, being in international sales or hospitality is like super meaningful, and we'll know because we like get the feeling around it. But if we're in something that doesn't light us up and we're trying to prove ourselves, we can end up in this kind of like one of those 2p things that you do at the arcade, but it never actually works. It never goes down the hole in the middle. It just constantly spins around all the time, and you get a load of stuff done, but it's not necessarily like you want to build a castle and you're actually building you're building something entirely different, and you're like, oh yeah, but I'm building this, look at this amazing thing that I'm creating. But actually you can sense like, yeah, but I'm not sure this is where I actually want to live. Like, is this what I actually want to build? And the only time I ever dropped the ball, it's really interesting, my like academically and stuff like that, I did okay. And at my A levels, like we do here in the UK, I did quite well. I was a driven kid. And then I got to uni and totally dropped the ball because of drugs and alcohol, basically. Like, it was the first time that I had something that forcibly, I don't know whether it was conscious or unconscious, I just didn't care. I was like, oh, like this, I'll just lose myself in this feedback loop. And then I just like didn't do that great with my first degree. I had to spend a few years figuring that out, but everything's fine. But I think it's really important. Well, it can be really, really powerful to get curious about the energy and where it's running and how it's running. And for me, it's about building a bridge. So I think often what we do is we go, okay, here's my life now. So for example, I was a teacher, you were in international sales, perhaps someone's, could be anything, they may be in something that's really meaningful. They may be a nurse, they may be, it doesn't matter. It could be anything, any kind of job. And you sense like, oh, I'd really like to be doing something different. But what we do is we create this kind of like perfect next step island. And we're like, oh, I really want to, like, how on earth am I going to get there? And for me, I built a bridge between the two. So I got really curious. I was like, like, I wonder, now that alcohol's not here, maybe I could do something. So like I went a few years ago, good few years ago back now, I went to like a free weekend for life coaching. And I was like, and I didn't sleep for like a week afterwards, because I was like, wow, this is it. Like, there's a me-shaped hole. Who knew it? Like, who knew it? I've been looking for it the whole way and I found it. And then like over time, I started doing a little bit of coaching in school, sort of like a day a week. And then in the end, it was like, then at one point or another, you've kind of like semi-built the bridge. And then there's this kind of like, you're at the edge of your comfort zone and you're like, am I going to jump? So the decision for me was, I've got, I'm coaching people on the side. I've got like a few clients and it's going really well. And I've, we've been training in different disciplines and was building Sober Rebellion. And I was like, we spoke about this. It was like, I think it's time to make the leap. And in the end, funnily enough, the universe just gave me a nudge. And it was scary, but it was the best thing that I ever did. I'll never forget hovering over that send button to my current line manager, not current line manager, my line manager then, of like, I've decided not to come back next year, send. But then just the instant, it was almost like, it was like the craziest thing, because there was all this like thinking around, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And then the moment my finger was on the button and it was done, it flipped from like, oh fuck, to, oh, whoa, like what's going to happen now? And there's a route to that place for all of us if it's something that we want to do. And it's also really interesting that for a lot of people that I've worked with, it's not what we're doing, it's how. And the energy, it's like suddenly we can realize, oh, I've been running on a scarcity thing. And then when we realize that and like go on a journey of like kind of like working through that and being full of more abundance, suddenly we're like, oh, this is a great job for me. This is exactly where I want to be, because I'm not performing my duties in order to complete myself or because I feel like I need to prove myself. I'm doing it for joy and for fun. And so things like, it can also be the case that nothing changes and everything's different. And that's because it's all happening from inside of us anyway. So suddenly if our entire belief system shifts, or if we start to like start to get really curious, suddenly the whole thing can change. Like the whole job can change in front of our very eyes without it actually changing at all.
That is true. That is true. So there's a multitude of options available to you folks. So.
Yeah, and there's things available in action that aren't available in sitting on the sofa and thinking.
Oh yeah.
You know, like those kinds of worlds that we create and oh, I could never do this and I could never do that. And I mean, on a weekly basis, I have that experience where I'm like, oh, I've got this thing to do, and I create how long it's going to take me, what it's going to mean, how difficult it's going to be. I sit down to do it, and 20 minutes in, I'm like, oh, right, well, that's basically done then. Or it's like, oh, this is fun. Like, so actually I wasn't feeling the thing. I was feeling my thinking leading up to it. Like, oh, how interesting. You know, and that's how it works.
It does. It does. And there was something you said a little while ago about not needing to have like the full, when you're talking about the bridge, not needing to have the full thing figured out. And I think it was Carolina that talked about this on the podcast when we interviewed her, just seeing the next step, the one thing that's in front of you. And when you start to move into that, your energy changes, the way that you feel about it changes. And if you can have faith and an element of trust in the fact that it will work out the way that it's meant to, with that ease and that taking your hands off the steering wheel and no more gripping, it starts to flow and things happen. And there is just that beginning, that little leap at the beginning where it is pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. It is making a commitment to something. So I remember signing up for the coach training and I had a whole host of stuff around that. But it just felt 100% right. There was nothing about it that felt wrong. There were thoughts, of course, that came up around, you know, what happens if, but I just had absolute, for the first time, I think in my life, had absolute faith and trust in the decision I was making. And that just wouldn't have been available to me had I still been drinking, because I just would not have been in any way tuned in. So that connection back with yourself, I think, is it's the fundamental to me, because nobody else can really like people. I did listen to other people for a long time, but nobody else can really tell you what's right for you or where you, in inverted commas, should be going. That's down to you. And it can be a bit of a distraction to go looking for other people to kind of fix our issues and ideas and point us in the right direction, because then the onus is off us. Like, it doesn't feel quite so scary. But this is another point about radical responsibility. Like, nobody else is going to do this for you. So what choice are you going to make?
And that's that thing about that one step that you were talking about before, where, you know, like, so to give you an example with this podcast. So I looked the other day at my line of day journal, and it said, basically, we're coming up on the 1 year anniversary, right? And it was like, it said, we've released the first podcast today or something like that. And I was like, wow, like that's made up of a series of just one step. Like 20 minutes ago, whenever it was that we started doing this didn't exist. So me and you may have had a load of thinking about, what the podcast is going to be like, how's it going to be received? And we'll like, you know, we get feelings associated with that because that's kind of how it goes. But here we are, we're literally in the moment creating this now with each other live, and it will form part of the tapestry of the one steps. And, there's that whole thing of like, we often overestimate what we can do in a year, but drastically underestimate what we can do in a lifetime or in 10. And I love what Michael Neal says on this. He talks about like, often we're striving for the perfect day, but he often wishes his partner like, have an average day, because 365 average days of like average kind of like development or growth, or that's so powerful. Because often what happens with the perfectionist model, as I used to run on, is we manage it for 10 days and then we say, oh, fuck that off, and we just don't do it for 10. And so actually the energy, it's really interesting. It's like being curious about what's going to take us into that next step is really powerful. Like these days, I kind of make less stuff up in my head. So like I make up less deadlines. I don't create as much stress for myself, because I see like it's unfolding in its own way, and I just let it play out, and I trust in that. And then I'm pleasantly surprised to look back every month and be like, wow, we got quite a lot done, pal. Loads got done. It can be really easy to be like, oh, it's not going to happen. But I can promise anyone listening to this that a series of, this is like one of the greatest kind of principles in investing, right? Is that kind of like small gains held over a long period are so freaking powerful. And all of that thinking that comes with the, oh my goodness me, I want to build this perfect place where I'm going. And to me, it's like that can really get in the way of us doing that one little thing. And it's kind of like it's such a wonderful way to live life, and to just stay curious and to be like, well, you can always, whatever happens, you make a little step in one direction. If you're like, oh, this wasn't the right direction, you just make a little step in a different direction. Sometimes there's a leap, and when it comes, and often the leap is still a step though, but it comes as a kind of like, you can feel, this one's there's something different about this one. It's kind of like a turning point or whatever. And sometimes you can't. Sometimes you realize after the fact, you're like, whoa, that tiny step turned out to be this massive footprint. I had no idea that really tiny car. I had no idea, did we? Like, think about it. When I just pinged your message and I was like, all right, mate, we've got to get to know each other. We've definitely got to collab sometime. Like, we had no idea what was going to come from that.
Yeah. And if all you're focused on is the outcome, then you miss out on all this. Like, you might get there with whatever the driving energy is, but you miss out on everything that's in between. So like this idea that there's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow is the gold. Like, you've got to enjoy being in it. And I feel when I fall into that mode of striving for something, it just,
my blinds are just about to collapse and us gone. Carry on.
Carry on.
This is going to be good.
We get hit. We'll see another A&E episode here. You can entirely miss out on the good stuff, the really good stuff, by striving for an end goal. And I've done this so many times in my life. Worked really, really hard towards something. Thought, oh, it'll be all right when XYZ happens. You get there and it's like, oh.
It's a misunderstanding. It's like, we recorded a podcast way back called "I'll Be Happy When," and this is it's that pattern playing out. I'll be happy when I get to this destination, or it's like, newsflash, the destination doesn't really exist. Like, it's in constant flux all the time. This moment is all we ever have. And so like, I remember having this kind of conversation with my dad. He was talking about, so it feels like sometimes the old model is like, you do a job that's all right, you just about get by, you put up with it for 50 years, you retire, and then you kind of like play golf for the next 25 years or whatever, and I'm like, and I kind of made the point, I was like, yeah, or you could start, I'm going to start making moves in my life so that the idea of retirement becomes kind of like a moot point. It's like, well, I might do a bit less, but goodness me, I don't know where I'm going to be 30 years from now, but I'm going to hedge my bets on the fact that I would still love to be talking and going out and helping people to the best of my ability, and I'm not going to want to like ever completely give it up. It's not going to be like, oh my god, I can't wait for the day where I finally get to that. Like it just seems like a, you know, and it's like, I think a lot of people, they get there and they're like, where is it then? Where is this promised land we've all been promised? And it's here. It's right here, right now. So in making that first step, that's the journey. Like, you're on the journey regardless, but it just brings a spark into life. And I really think I always say to people, I've had a number of clients now, I hate that word, a number of coaching buddies, I don't know what we're going to call it, but a number of coaching buddies who they've been like, oh, I really think I want to do this. And what they've decided to do is take one step, and they've, you know, started a blog, or you know, started doing one thing on one day a week, or gone part-time, and then they've come back to me and they've been like, oh, that's so wonderful. Like, I'm so happy about where I am. Like my normal day to day, as they would call it, has taken on this new color. I love it. And then I do my day a week volunteering here or whatever, and I love that too. I would never have known that just putting half a day aside for me and my passions would have had this wonderful effect on everything else that I do. So
yeah,
you know, I'm not really sure that it's funny, huh? Because when we started talking about comfort zones, and you know, that line, and how do you kind of know that something is right for you, whether you're doing it just for the sake of growing, you know, is it just going to be another certificate in the drawer, which I've got loads of them, or is it actually like connected to the core of who you are? And I think some of that comes from it's funny because we've been talking about this a lot earlier, recently, haven't we, Ellie? But like animating energy around it. Like, what does it feel like? Because I now know that me and you are crazy busy. Like we were literally just talking before this call, and I was like, I need to like relook at some things, because the space, it's kind of like, you know, when you put that filler in a hole and it just keeps expanding. It's like it's at the edge, and I need a bit more space.
Yeah.
But I feel calm, and I feel really joyful, and I sleep well. And if I rewind back a while to when I was sort of less busy, but I had way more to do, or it felt like it, and there were deadlines and timelines and scarcity, and like there's, oh my goodness, if I don't get this done now, then this will never get done. And effectively what happened for me in my story was I ran on that energy for about a year, burnt out, didn't do a lot for 6 months. And then I learned through experience. At the end of the 6 months, I was like, oh, do you know what? It's still all right. Like, there's still like people that need coaching. Like, there's no, all of that, so much of that stuff was just made up. I was just tripping on a load of stuff that I'd made up in my head that felt really important, and it felt really real. But you don't have to, like, the wonderful thing is you don't have to go through that process. Like, you don't have to have the experience of like burning out for however many months at a time. By just going into, you know, by just finding people who are passionately driven, and driven with an energy that gives them, like feeds them, and doesn't drain them. You know, that's a really, really powerful thing. That's a powerful journey to be on. So get curious about what's animating you.
Yeah, I think there is something really to be said about like the whole crash and burn story. It's one way of doing it.
It's a classic.
You can take a lot to get back up again and get going.
Top seller. A bestseller.
But the steadier way, and it's those, as you said, it's those little shifts, really, really subtle shifts that can have profound change. And I think that possibly is the route to making, you know, because we know this whole thing about discomfort. So growth is on the other side of discomfort. But the steady away approach, I think, is an easier path to getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, instead of continually just throwing yourself in right at the deep end and checking out whether you're going to sink or whether you're going to swim. I think it's a little more gentler with the nervous system to do the steady away approach, but that's sustainable. Like, you can build upon that, and you can course correct along the way, and you can check in with your intention and your values. Like, is this aligned? Does this feel right? And it may still feel uncomfortable, and you may still come across fear, but you'll know whether you're heading in the right direction or not.
Yeah, like I was on a wonderful call this week where we were talking about how being aligned with life, it doesn't mean that it's always like easy. It doesn't mean that you're not going to have challenges and feel uncomfortable and be human and go through pain and grief and like human things and joy and awe and all the rest of it. Like, it's, but you can go on the journey of figuring out what living in alignment with the flow of life means, or you can not. And I think just having the purpose behind, no, I want to go on that journey, you know, I want to figure out what that means. Like in Taoism, like literally going with the flow, being like water, so that those you see flow around the pebbles, not like smash into them when they come. And it doesn't mean that there aren't pebbles, doesn't mean that you don't like get scratched and knocked along the way, but there's a different kind of feeling that comes with it. So, and I think that like it's hard to kind of put into words, but when you're looking at that thing in front of you and you're trying to figure out, like, you know, when you're looking at the pole dancing course and you're like, is this for me? Is this really what I want to do? It's like, well, is it expansive? Is it there as a something that you feel is going to feed you and the people around you? What's the footprint going to be? And like, you do the best that you can. And like, you know, I've definitely, if we realize that we've stepped into something and we're like, oh, actually, my reasons for doing this were, yeah, I'm not sure I am aligned. That's okay. That's a massive, wonderful thing to learn.
Mm.
And over time, we start to like really realize, like, because I now do a lot of courses and a lot of things I'm doing, like from looking at it from the outside, I'm doing a lot of things that I've always done, but I'm not getting burnt out from them. The energy is really different. You know, I've sort of realized that I do want to keep learning. I do want to keep learning all this stuff to do with the podcast and everything, but it's not like and I have to do it in this way because that is a reflection of the kind of person that I am. And then that's a really wonderful open space to be in, because suddenly just everything starts shifting. Like the way that your life is running just starts running differently.
So you don't fancy pole dancing anytime soon then?
Well, here's a thing.
Maybe.
Here's the thing. I've started salsa dancing a lot more recently, and I can feel I would never have guessed it. You know, I've always liked to dance, but I'm really sort of like, I've got like, you know, when you start, I don't know, like for me, it used to be like shooting hoops with basketball. There was this feeling of your hands moving and the whoosh, and it was like so like addictive, but in like a wow, the whole kind of like somatic experience of all of this and the meditative element of it is wonderful. And I'm getting that same feeling from salsa dancing. You know, it was messy as hell at the beginning. I didn't know what I was doing, but now I've got the steps and now I'm being able to, it's like, oh, wow. And then like you're in flow with somebody else and you're not thinking and it just, you know, and then I'm starting to get excited about something so basically for a good few lessons, I was like, oh, I don't think I'm going to go. And then I was like looking for a reason not to go. And Robin was like, oh, shut up. Come on, let's go. And now I've had 3 or 4 experiences where preceding it, I've been like, and then I've gone and been like, wow, that was badass. That was so cool. And now I'm like, oh, that's great for me. Like all that's getting whipped up ahead of time is a load of thinking.
Yeah.
And I want to go on this journey. And I've realized it's wonderful. Like there's not much booze in the salsa scene because no one wants to dance with the drunk person who can't dance. It's just like everyone's having fun. The focal point is dancing, not drinking. And I'm just like so aligned with it. And I said to you the other day, like, yeah, I'm going to go and do this Latin music festival and all these things that have opened up. And there was a time where, there was a time where the choice between learning to salsa dance and learning to pole dance, I'm not sure there would have been actually that much of a difference between the two. So maybe in the future, I will be a pole dancer. Who knows?
There you go. You heard it here first, folks. Wowee.
There was a maybe. There was a maybe in there.
Well, you've signed up for it now, so I do believe that we'll be sending. You've sent me off when I can't even speak anymore. Wow, the thoughts. God, I've got an image in my mind. It's all going wrong. Oh, we'll be selling tickets. So watch out for the live event coming soon.
We spoke about one step at a time. Okay.
This is my driven tendencies coming to the fore. I think that there is something about not listening to the first thing that you think, because that's not really you, right? That's not the inner voice that I'm talking about. The first voice that you hear will be all the reasons why you shouldn't do something. There's the course that I signed up for recently that I am thoroughly enjoying. And it's funny how the universe like taps you on the shoulder a few times. So I've had many, many taps, and every tap I listened to the first thing that I thought. Unfortunately, the last time I got a tap, I kind of shook myself out of, hang on a minute, that's like, I'm just making up a really shitty reason why I can't do this course. And it's made up and it's fucking nonsense. So I'm now not going to believe that anymore. And I'm going to sign up for it. And it's going to feel uncomfortable. For sure it'll feel uncomfortable. But it was wholehearted. And it's interesting because it's shaken so much stuff up. I feel like I'm I've been in a washing machine and now I'm going through a mincer. That's what I feel like right now. And earlier on, I was thinking of, from the 80s with the old, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. And I was like, yeah, you don't have to. I have just got to stay with it. I've just got to stay with it. And I've got to remain anchored into my heart space. And this is right. It's all as it's meant to be. It feels rough right now, but I can include it. And it's going to be glorious to see what's on the other side of it.
It's like intentionally shaking the snow globe. And then it's like, we do that a bit. Sometimes that's what a coaching session's like. Like we shake it up and then we put it down, and then it needs some time. And then from a different vantage point, a little bit down the road, and that's the thing about the one step or the signing up to the thing or the going to the one salsa class it's that you really get to learn that we're always living in the feeling of our thinking. So whatever is coming up for you prior to it, you'll live in the feeling of that thing. It's not telling you what the thing is going to be like. And maybe some of your predictions are true. Maybe they're not. But even when you get there, you're still going to be living in your feeling of the thinking about, or in your feeling in that thing. And that's just a really interesting thing to know, because it means that sometimes your feelings are going to be telling you, oh, I'm not sure about this, or I don't know if this is a good idea. And it's going to be a load of BS. It might be the greatest thing that you've ever done. And so for many of us, we wait. If I'd have waited for the time where I was like, yes, let's go, salsa, no way. And I can tell you now, climbing and salsa are the two things recently over the last few years where I felt like a kid, like it was like when I first started skating. I was like, oh, this, like every part of me was like this. And yeah, I was like, I was right old scared before it.
Right, old scared.
It's going to be right. I was like, I'm going to be right. Shit. You know, what are they going to think of me? All the rest of it. And you get there within a minute. I was like, oh, that was all made up. Everyone's thinking that.
Yeah.
Everybody's doing the same thing. Everybody's scaring themselves. I was just freaking myself out. You know?
But, you know, to round this off, when you surround yourself with people that are willing to edge into that, like that, that feels amazing. It really does. You're really with your people then, and there's so much humility and compassion and grace and fun and laughter, because people in those sorts of spaces, they don't take themselves too seriously. They won't allow themselves to take themselves too seriously.
I got a lovely my mind just went to, you know, Stay Stopped when you were talking about that. You know, and that vibe of like people that have all got each other's backs, and like everyone's going on their own journey, and we can all, like, you know, laugh and cry, and, you know, it's lovely. You're so right. Like that's it's a really, really powerful thing to be doing.
You know what? I hadn't thought of that. I was thinking about it from my own experience as a participant in these things, and I hadn't thought that, like, we've created that didn't exist before.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. Like anything's possible, right? You can create, like, that creation thing is, we kind of forget just how magical and amazing that is. It was an idea and something that we were pulled to do, and we had a lot of thinking about it as well. You know, we helped each other with that. And look at what's going on with it now. It's amazing. So cool. So yeah, anyone, we can all do it. We can all do it one step at a time. Awesome, team. Speaking of which,
just before you go into that, I do want to say I had a vision in the middle of all of this.
Oh no, is it? It's not another vision of me on a bike.
It's the combination of two things.
It's not the SpongeBob SquarePants hot pants.
Nope. It's
no, nope.
When you do go into lap dance training / pole dance training.
I don't know if they do lap dance training. Maybe they do. It's just who knows.
Right. Okay. Let's stick with the pole, because I think it works better. So when you go into pole dance training, I've got a name ready for you. Sam, the slippery fish. There you go. You are the slippery fish.
Fine. I'll take it.
I'll have it. All right then.
I've got a load of thinking about that, but it might be the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. So I'm gonna
you could have one of those like mermaid suits on.
Let's take a rain check on this for now. Let's pause it and let's see how it looks 6 months from now.
Quite literally, see how it looks.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it's. Start with salsa. Etch up the. I was going to say ladder, but perhaps
sidle your way into.
I'm going to kill this conversation now before you have any more visions, because I think it's there. So say cheerio.
Bye.
See you soon.